I was folding laundry when my daughter called. I thought she was confirming the wedding rehearsal time. Instead, she said, "We already got married, Mom. Yesterday. Only people who matter were invited." My hands froze mid-fold. 32 years of birthdays, scraped knees, college tuition. "You weren't there because you never supported us," she continued. "But I need something from you. Your beach house in Cape May. Send me the keys for our honeymoon." I heard her husband laughing in the background. I smiled into the phone. "Of course, sweetheart." The dial tone echoed in my ear long after Amanda hung up. I stood in my living room, a half-folded towel clutched in my trembling hands, trying to process what had just happened. My daughter had gotten married without me, without her mother, the woman who had been there for every fever, every heartbreak, every milestone for 28 years. The beach house. She wanted my beach house. I sank onto the couch, the towel falling forgotten to the floor. The cottage in Cape May, New Jersey wasn't just a property to me. It was my dream realized, my sanctuary, my reward for decades of hard work. I'd bought it 15 years ago, right after my divorce from Amanda's father became final. I remember driving down to the shore that first time as the sole owner, keys in hand, feeling like I'd finally claimed something entirely mine. It was a 3-bedroom cottage, painted soft yellow with white shutters, just 2 blocks from the beach. The front porch had a swing where I'd spent countless summer evenings reading and listening to the waves. Inside, hardwood floors glowed honey-colored in the sunlight. My grandmother's antique rug lay in the living room, a Persian piece that had been in our family for 3 generations. The kitchen had vintage tiles I'd painstakingly restored myself. Every corner held a memory. Every room represented a piece of my heart. The property was worth about $650,000 now, according to the last assessment. Not that I'd ever planned to sell it. This was supposed to be where I retired, where I'd spend my golden years walking on the beach, hosting friends, maybe finally writing that book I'd always talked about. My daughter Amanda was 28 now, a registered nurse, though she'd been talking about quitting lately. She'd graduated from nursing school 5 years ago, and I'd been so proud. I'd paid for her education, every penny of it, including her student loans when she couldn't find work right away. $47,000 I'd paid off for her. Then there was her first car, a reliable Honda that cost me $12,000. Her apartment deposit when she moved out, first and last month's rent plus security, another $4,000. I'd never kept count before, never wanted to. She was my daughter. You don't tally, love. But now, sitting alone in my living room, those numbers scrolled through my mind unbidden. Everything had changed 6 months ago when she met Trevor. She'd brought him to Sunday dinner at my house, and I'd tried so hard to like him. Trevor was 31, tall, with the kind of smooth confidence that some people find charming and others find slippery. He worked in cryptocurrency trading, he'd told me, though he'd been vague about the specifics. He wore expensive watches and drove a BMW, and he had a way of dominating every conversation. That first dinner, he'd made comments about my outdated values when I'd mentioned I preferred investing in stable index funds. He'd called my careful financial planning boomer mentality with a laugh that wasn't quite friendly. Amanda had laughed too, a sound I'd never heard from her before, sharp and unkind. After that, things deteriorated quickly. Our weekly dinners became bi-weekly, then monthly, then canceled altogether. Amanda's phone calls grew shorter. When I'd ask about her life, she'd give one-word answers and say she had to go. Trevor was always in the background. I could hear his voice, feel his presence like a cold draft. I tried to be supportive despite my growing unease about him. When Amanda mentioned Trevor's pressure for her to quit nursing and join his business ventures, I'd bitten my tongue. When she stopped talking about her patients and started talking about investment properties and passive income, I'd nodded and smiled. I'd invited them to Thanksgiving, spent 2 days cooking Amanda's favorite dishes. Trevor had spent the entire meal on his phone. He'd sat at my table, eating my food, and made trades on his cryptocurrency app, barely acknowledging anyone. When I gently asked if he could put the phone away for dinner, he'd looked at me like I'd suggested something absurd. "Money doesn't sleep, Jocelyn," he'd said, using my first name in a way that felt deliberately disrespectful. Amanda had defended him, said I was being unreasonable. 2 months ago, they'd announced their engagement. I'd been cautiously happy, hoping marriage might settle them, might bring Amanda back to herself. I'd offered to help plan the wedding, offered to contribute financially however I could. Amanda's response had been cold. Trevor's parents are handling everything. They actually have money. That had stung more than I'd admitted at the time. I'd worked as a hospital administrator for 33 years, climbing from an entry-level position to director of operations. I'd raised Amanda alone after her father left us when she was 7. I owned my home outright, a comfortable 3-bedroom colonial in a good Pennsylvania neighborhood. I had the beach house. I had $200,000 in my retirement account, carefully saved and invested. I wasn't wealthy, but I was comfortable and proud of what I'd built from nothing. But to Amanda, influenced by Trevor and his flashy lifestyle, I was poor, embarrassing, not enough. Now, sitting with the afternoon sun slanting through my windows, I pulled out my phone and called my best friend, Patricia. She answered on the second ring. "They got married without me," I said, and my voice broke on the last word. Patricia was silent for a moment, then I heard her sharp intake of breath. "They, what?" I told her everything. Amanda's cold announcement, the cruel comment about people who matter, Trevor's laughter in the background, the demand for the beach house keys. "Don't you dare give them that house," Patricia said fiercely. "That girl needs to learn some respect, and her husband needs to learn he can't just take whatever he wants." "I already told her yes," I admitted. "Jocelyn, I have an idea," I interrupted. Something was forming in my mind, a need to understand what was really happening. "Let me call you back." I hung up and went to my computer. The beach house had a security system, installed 2 years ago after a string of break-ins in the neighborhood. But more importantly, it had cameras. I'd set them up myself with help from a technician, cameras that fed to a cloud service I could access from anywhere. But first, I wanted to know more about Trevor. I'd been so focused on trying to maintain my relationship with Amanda that I'd never really dug into who this man was. I started with simple searches. Trevor Blackwell, his full name. At first, just the usual social media profiles appeared, photos of him looking successful and confident. But I kept digging, searching for business records, court filings, anything public. It took an hour of searching, but I found it. 2 months ago, a lawsuit had been filed against one of Trevor's business entities. The details were partially sealed, but the public records showed enough. Fraud allegations, investors claiming they'd been misled about cryptocurrency returns, losses totaling over $300,000. The case had been settled quietly out of court. I dug deeper. The settlement had been paid by Trevor's parents, $400,000 to make the whole thing disappear. My hands were shaking as I searched property records next. Trevor Blackwell had purchased a luxury condo in Miami 3 months ago. The down payment alone was $300,000. Where does a 31-year-old who'd just been sued for fraud get that kind of money? The answer was obvious. His parents. His parents who'd paid his settlement. His parents who were funding his lifestyle. His parents who, according to Amanda, were handling everything for the wedding. My daughter had married a con artist, and his family had money enough to cover up his schemes. I barely slept that night. I kept thinking about the lawsuit, about Trevor's pattern of fraud, about my daughter walking into a life built on deception. Despite everything, despite the cruel way she'd treated me, she was still my child. I had to try to warn her. I called Amanda the next morning at 8 o'clock, knowing she'd be awake. She'd always been an early riser. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice tight with annoyance. "What, Mom?" "Honey, I need to talk to you about something important," I began, trying to keep my voice steady and calm. I did some research on Trevor's business background, and I found some things that concern me. There was a lawsuit. "Oh my God." Amanda's voice went cold and sharp. "You're spying on my husband? Are you serious right now?" "I'm not spying. The records are public." "Amanda, he was sued for defrauding investors. His parents paid a $400,000 settlement." "Stop!" Amanda shouted so loudly I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "I can't believe you. You're so jealous. You can't stand that I'm happy. You can't stand that I found someone successful. Someone who actually has ambition and money and plans for the future." "This isn't about jealousy, sweetheart. This is about protecting you." "Trevor told me you'd do this," she interrupted, and I could hear she was crying now, but they were angry tears. "He said you'd try to ruin our marriage before it even started." He said you'd make up lies because you're a bitter, lonely woman who can't handle that I don't need you anymore. Each word was a knife. Amanda, please just listen. You listen, a male voice cut in. Trevor had taken the phone. His voice was smooth, but there was steel underneath, a threat barely concealed. Listen very carefully, Jocelyn. I know you've been snooping into my business. That lawsuit you found? It was nothing. A misunderstanding with an overly emotional investor who didn't understand market volatility. Everything was resolved legally and properly. Then why did your parents have to pay $400,000? My family's financial arrangements are none of your concern, he said, his voice dropping lower. But here's what is your concern. If you keep digging into my business, if you keep spreading lies about me to Amanda or anyone else, I will make sure Amanda never speaks to you again. Do you understand me? You'll lose your daughter completely. Forever. My heart was pounding. I could hear Amanda in the background, her voice muffled, but she sounded like she was still crying. Now, Trevor continued, are you going to be a good mother and overnight those keys to us like you promised? Or are we going to have a problem? Because I promise you, Jocelyn, you don't want to have a problem with me. The threat in his voice was unmistakable. I found myself nodding even though he couldn't see me, fear closing my throat. I'll send the keys, I whispered. Smart choice. He hung up without another word. I sat holding the phone, feeling like I'd just lost a battle I didn't even know how to fight, but Amanda was my daughter. If sending the keys kept some connection, some hope of reaching her eventually, then I'd do it. I drove to the post office that afternoon, the key ring in an overnight envelope. The beach house had 3 keys, front door, back door, and the storage shed. I held them for a long moment before sealing the envelope, remembering happier times. Amanda at 12, building sandcastles on the beach. Amanda at 16, having her first real conversation with me about boys while we walked along the shore at sunset. Amanda at 23, newly graduated from nursing school, celebrating on the deck with champagne. When had I lost her? Jocelyn? A voice said behind me in line. I turned to see Roger, my ex-husband, Amanda's father. He looked older than when I'd last seen him 2 years ago, his hair more gray than brown now. He was with a woman I didn't recognize, younger than both of us, and I could see 2 little boys in the car parked outside. Roger, I managed. I tried calling Amanda about the wedding next month, he said, but she hasn't called me back. Do you know what time the ceremony starts? My throat tightened. The wedding was yesterday. His face went blank with confusion. What? She got married yesterday. Neither of us was invited. I watched the emotions cross his face. Shock, hurt, then something that looked almost like relief. Well, he said after a moment, I guess she needed her space. You know how you can be, Jocelyn. Always hovering, always controlling. Maybe she just wanted a day that was hers. The casual cruelty of it, the way he made it my fault, made me feel like I was drowning. I turned away, handed my envelope to the postal clerk, and walked out without another word. At home, I couldn't settle. I moved from room to room, picking things up and putting them down, unable to focus. Finally, I sat on my couch with a photo album, looking at pictures of Amanda growing up. My beautiful girl. Where had it all gone wrong? That evening, unable to sleep, I made the mistake of checking Facebook. Amanda had posted wedding photos. The album had 63 pictures, and I scrolled through each one with a kind of horrified fascination. The wedding had been at an estate, somewhere with manicured gardens and a fountain. Amanda wore a dress that must have cost thousands, all lace and silk and pearls. Trevor stood beside her in a tailored suit, his parents on either side, both of them elegant and expensively dressed. There were at least 100 guests. I could see a band, an elaborate cake, tables with flower arrangements that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. Amanda's caption read, "Surrounded by our real family and friends who've always believed in us. Starting our forever with people who matter. No room for negativity or toxic energy in our new life together." The comments scrolled on and on. Congratulations, beautiful bride, perfect couple, so happy for you. Then I saw faces I recognized in the photos. My sister Carol was there, my younger sister who I'd helped put through community college. She was in 3 photos, smiling, holding a champagne glass. My niece, Carol's daughter, was a bridesmaid in a lavender dress. They'd all known. They'd known I wasn't invited, known Amanda had excluded her own mother, and they'd gone anyway. I closed my laptop and sat in the dark, feeling more alone than I'd felt since my divorce 15 years ago. At midnight, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I picked it up, expecting spam. It was a photo. Trevor and Amanda at my beach house, clearly taken just hours ago. They were on my deck, the ocean visible behind them, holding champagne glasses and laughing. Amanda was wearing a bikini. Trevor had his arm around her waist. The message read, "Thanks for the honeymoon spot, Mom. Trevor says the house is way nicer than you deserve. P.S. We're having a party here this weekend, inviting 50 friends. Don't worry, we'll try not to break anything. LOL." Before I could process that, another message came through. "Oh, and Trevor's parents are in love with this place. They want to make an offer to buy it. Trevor says you'll sell it to us for $400,000, half what it's worth. Family discount. We'll discuss after the honeymoon." I stared at my phone, reading the messages over and over, and something inside me shifted. The hurt began to harden into something else. Determination. Resolve. They thought I was weak. They thought I'd just hand over everything I'd worked for because my daughter demanded it. They were wrong. I remembered the security cameras. In my shock and hurt, I'd forgotten I could actually see what was happening at the beach house in real time. I grabbed my laptop, fumbling with the password for the security company's website, my fingers clumsy with urgency. The system loaded slowly, showing 4 camera views: front door, back deck, living room, and driveway. I clicked on the living room feed first. What I saw made my stomach turn. My beautiful living room was destroyed. There weren't just 2 people there. There were dozens. Young people I didn't recognize, sprawled on my furniture, drinks in hand, music playing so loud I could see the camera image vibrating. Someone was smoking inside, despite the clear no-smoking rule I'd always maintained. Red wine was spilling on my white sofa as a girl laughed and tried to refill her glass while dancing. I switched to the deck camera. More people out there, someone jumping on my outdoor furniture. I watched as a man I didn't recognize leaned too hard on my deck railing and a piece of wood cracked. The front door camera showed people coming and going, carrying in cases of beer, bottles of liquor. This wasn't a quiet honeymoon. This was a full party. I scrolled back through the recorded footage from earlier in the day. Trevor giving tours of the house to his friends, gesturing expansively. "This is about to be our investment property," I could see him saying, though the cameras didn't record audio. "My mother-in-law is going to sign it over to us. She doesn't have a choice." I watched as someone jumped on my bed in the master bedroom, the antique frame I'd bought at an estate sale creaking ominously. I watched as cigarette ash was flicked onto my grandmother's rug. I watched as Amanda herself, my daughter, laughed while someone spilled vodka on my kitchen counter and made no move to clean it up. They were destroying my sanctuary. On purpose, it seemed, with absolute disregard. I called Patricia at 6 in the morning. "I'm driving down there," I told her. "I'm going to kick them out, change the locks, and document every bit of damage. Then I'm billing them for it." "Jocelyn, wait," Patricia said, her voice thick with sleep. "Call the police. Let them handle it. It's my house. I can handle this myself. Please don't do this alone." But I'd already made up my mind. I hung up, threw clothes in an overnight bag, and was on the road by 6:30. The drive from my home in eastern Pennsylvania to Cape May was about 3 hours. I drove fast, anger fueling every mile. I'd spent years being patient with Amanda, understanding when she canceled plans, making excuses for her coldness, trying to accept Trevor despite my reservations. But this was different. This was my property, my investment, my future security they were casually destroying. I arrived at the beach house at 9:45 in the morning. The street was quiet, most summer rentals still empty in early spring. My cottage stood out with cars parked haphazardly in the driveway and along the curb. I counted 7 vehicles. The front door was unlocked. I walked in and immediately smelled stale cigarette smoke mixed with alcohol. The living room looked even worse in person than on the cameras. My white sofa had multiple dark stains. My grandmother's rug had burn marks from dropped cigarettes. The antique coffee table had water rings and scratches. My mother's china cabinet, which I'd moved here after she died, had a cracked glass door. I walked through the rest of the house in a daze of horror. The kitchen window was broken, glass swept into a corner, but the window itself still shattered. Every surface was sticky with spilled drinks. One of the bedroom doors was off its hinges. The bathroom had makeup smeared on the mirror and towels thrown everywhere, some of them ruined with what looked like hair dye stains. I heard movement from the master bedroom and walked toward it, my footsteps loud on the hardwood floor. Amanda emerged first, wearing one of my robes, her hair messy. She saw me, and her eyes went wide, then narrowed with anger. "What are you doing here?" she snapped. "This is our honeymoon." Trevor came out behind her, shirtless, clearly hungover. He took one look at me and laughed. "Did you drive all the way down here to check up on us?" "That's pathetic, Jocelyn." "Get out," I said, surprised by how steady my voice was. "Both of you, get out of my house, now. Look at what you've done. Look at this damage." Trevor walked past me into the living room, looking around with casual indifference. "Damage? This is normal wear and tear. You gave us permission to be here. You can't prove we did any of this." "I have security cameras," I said. "I have footage of everything." His expression didn't change. "So? You invited us here. Anything that happened is on you for letting us stay." He pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, then turned it to show me. "See this? This email from your account to me, sent 3 days ago. Quote, 'You and Amanda are welcome to stay at the beach house for 2 weeks. Use it however you like. Mi casa es su casa.' End quote. Time-stamped, dated, completely legitimate. I felt the blood drain from my face. "I never sent that." "Sure you did." He smiled, and it was the coldest smile I'd ever seen, or someone with access to your email did. "Either way, we have written permission. So if you want to bill us for damages, good luck proving we caused them. My father's a lawyer, and he'll tie you up in court for years." "Amanda," I turned to my daughter, pleading, "you know I didn't send that email. You know this is wrong." She looked away, wouldn't meet my eyes. "Trevor's right. You said we could stay here. This is your fault for not having insurance or whatever." Trevor wasn't done. He stepped closer to me, still holding his phone. "Now let me show you something else interesting, Jocelyn. Something you seem to have forgotten. This property deed? The one I pulled from the county records? It shows Amanda's name right here, added 10 years ago. She's a co-owner of this property, 50%. Which means I, as her legal husband, have rights to this property too." The room spun. He was right. When Amanda turned 18, my lawyer had suggested adding her to the deed for estate planning purposes, to make inheritance easier if something happened to me. I'd done it without thinking twice, never imagining a scenario like this. "So here's what's going to happen," Trevor continued, his voice hardening. "You're going to leave. This is our honeymoon, and you're trespassing on property that's half Amanda's. If you don't leave right now, I'll call the police and have you removed for harassment. Do you understand?" I looked at Amanda, waiting for her to say something, to defend me, to show some shred of the girl I'd raised. But she just stood there, arms crossed, her face set in stubborn defiance. I walked out of my beach house, got in my car, and drove away. And for the first time since Amanda's phone call days ago, I cried. I cried for the daughter I'd lost, for the years I'd wasted trying to be perfect for her, and for my beautiful sanctuary that was being destroyed by people who felt entitled to take whatever they wanted. I drove for 20 minutes before I had to pull over, crying too hard to see the road. I sat in a beach parking lot, watching families set up umbrellas and children run toward the water, and wondered how my life had fallen apart so completely. Finally, when I could breathe again, I called Martin Caldwell. He'd been my attorney during the divorce 15 years ago, helped me with the beach house purchase, handled my will. I trusted him. His secretary put me through immediately. "Jocelyn? I haven't heard from you in a while. What's going on?" I told him everything. The wedding I wasn't invited to, the demand for the beach house, the party, the damage, the forged email, Trevor's revelation about the co-ownership. Martin was quiet for a long moment. "Do you have the deed handy?" "It's at home, but yes, Amanda's name is on it. I added her when she turned 18. "And you have security footage of the damage?" "Yes. Everything's saved to the cloud." "Send it to me." "But Jocelyn, I have to be honest with you. This is complicated. If Amanda's a legal co-owner, she has rights to be there. The email, even if you didn't send it, gives them permission from your account. If you try to forcibly remove them or change the locks, they could sue you for violating their property rights. So I just let them destroy my house? I'm saying we need to be strategic. This could turn into a long, expensive legal battle. Court costs, discovery, depositions. You're looking at maybe $30,000 to $40,000 in legal fees, minimum. And there's no guarantee you'd win. The number hit me like a punch. $30,000 to $40,000. That was a huge chunk of my retirement savings, money I'd spent 33 years accumulating. What are my options? I asked, hating how defeated I sounded. Your best bet might be to negotiate. Offer to buy out Amanda's half of the property, or agree to sell and split the proceeds 50-50. Cut your losses and move on. How is that fair? I paid for that house. I've maintained it. She's only been on the deed for 10 years and has never contributed a single dollar. Life isn't fair, Jocelyn. Law is about what you can prove and what rights people have on paper. On paper, she owns 50%. I thanked him and hung up, feeling sick. I spent the rest of the day in a cheap motel near Cape May, unable to face the 3-hour drive home. I called Amanda that evening, my hand shaking as I dialed. She answered with a weary sigh. What now? I spoke with my lawyer, I said, keeping my voice as calm as possible. He says we need to resolve this property issue. I'm proposing we sell the house and split the proceeds 50-50. It's the fairest solution. I heard muffled voices. Then Trevor's voice came through, distant but clear enough that I knew Amanda had put me on speaker. Tell her 70-30. What? I said. Amanda came back on, her voice flat. We'll agree to sell, but we want 70% of the proceeds. You've harassed us, tried to ruin our honeymoon, spread lies about Trevor, caused us emotional distress. 70% is generous considering we could sue you for damages. That's insane. That house is worth $650,000. You want $455,000 for doing nothing? Then don't sell, Amanda said coldly. We'll move in permanently. Trevor's already contacted a property manager about turning it into a vacation rental. We'll keep all the rental income, and you'll get nothing. Your choice, Mom. She hung up on me. I spent 3 more days in that motel, paralyzed by indecision and heartbreak. Patricia called me every day, begging me to come home. You can't do anything from there, she said. Come home. We'll figure this out together. I finally drove home on the 4th day, exhausted and defeated. My house felt empty and cold. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Amanda's cold face, heard Trevor's threatening voice. On the 6th day, a courier arrived with a certified letter. My hands shook as I signed for it. It was from a law firm, Blackwell and Associates, Trevor's father's firm. The letter was 5 pages of legal language, but the threats were clear. They were preparing to sue me for unlawful entry to the property, harassment, defamation for spreading malicious lies about Trevor's business practices, and elder abuse against Amanda, claiming I'd been emotionally manipulating and financially controlling her for years. The letter demanded I cease all contact with Amanda and Trevor, agree to their 70-30 split of the beach house proceeds, or face litigation that could cost me significantly more than the disputed property is worth. I sat at my kitchen table, the letter in front of me, and felt the last of my fight drain away. They were going to take everything: my beach house, my savings in legal fees, my daughter, my reputation. Everything. That night, my sister Carol called. I need to tell you something, she said, her voice shaking. I should have told you at the wedding, but I was a coward. Carol, just listen. At the reception, I went to the bathroom and passed by a sitting room where Trevor was talking to his parents. The door was cracked open. I heard him say. She paused, took a breath. He said, Phase 1 is complete. We got the beach house access. Phase 2 is getting her to sell her main house, too. Amanda says her mom's place is worth at least $400,000. Once the old lady trusts us again, Amanda will convince her to move into a retirement community, sign over the house to her for safekeeping. Then we flip both properties, clear over $1 million. My entire body went cold. Jocelyn, are you there? They're planning to take my home too, I whispered. I'm so sorry. I should have warned you immediately, but I thought maybe I misheard, or maybe it was just talk. But after hearing what they've done with the beach house, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. Your daughter, she's in on it. I heard her voice too, agreeing with Trevor's plan. She's not being manipulated. She's participating. After Carol hung up, I sat in the dark for hours. My daughter, my only child, the baby I'd rocked through colic and night terrors, was actively plotting to defraud me, to steal my home, my security, everything I'd worked my entire life to build. The betrayal was so deep, so complete, that I felt something break inside me that had been holding on, hoping, believing that somewhere deep down, Amanda still loved me. She didn't. Maybe she never had. The next morning, I woke up with crushing chest pain. At first, I thought I was having a heart attack. The pain radiated down my left arm, my jaw ached, I couldn't catch my breath. Patricia found me collapsed in my hallway when she came by to check on me. She called 911. The ambulance ride was a blur. The emergency room was bright lights and urgent voices and electrodes stuck to my chest. A young doctor, couldn't have been older than 30, told me my heart was fine, but my blood pressure was 190/115, dangerously high. This is a severe anxiety attack, he said, his voice kind. But Mrs. Carson, if you don't reduce your stress levels immediately, you're at serious risk for a stroke. Do you understand? This is life-threatening. I spent 6 hours in the ER while they monitored me, gave me medication to lower my blood pressure, had me talk to a social worker about stress management. The bill, I found out later, would be $3,200 after insurance. More money gone. More pieces of my security chipped away. Patricia took me home and refused to leave. She slept in my guest room, made me eat soup and toast, held my hand when I cried. You've got to let this go, she said. Your health is more important than any house. Amanda made her choice. You need to protect yourself now. But I couldn't let it go. My mind kept circling back to Trevor's overheard conversation. They wanted my home. My actual home, where I'd lived for 23 years, where I'd raised Amanda, where every room held memories. 2 days after the hospital visit, while Patricia was out getting groceries, my phone buzzed with an alert from my bank. Suspicious login attempt on your checking account. We've blocked the access and reset your security. Please contact us immediately. My hands shaking, I called the bank's fraud department. They walked me through what had happened. Someone had tried to log into my checking account online using my email address and a password. The bank's security system had flagged it as suspicious because the login was from an IP address in Cape May, New Jersey. I lived in Pennsylvania. The representative helped me change all my passwords, set up two-factor authentication, and flag my accounts for additional security. After I hung up, I sat staring at my phone, feeling violated. Trevor or Amanda had tried to access my bank account. They weren't just after my properties. They wanted access to everything. I was still sitting there, numb, when Patricia came back with groceries. We're reporting this to the police, she said when I told her. This is identity theft, Jocelyn. This is a crime. And say what? I can't prove it was them. They'll say my computer must have been hacked, or I must have given my password to someone by accident. Trevor's father will tie it up in legal technicalities. That afternoon, my doorbell rang. Patricia answered it while I was lying down, still recovering. I heard Amanda's voice, high and tearful, and my heart leapt despite everything. I rushed to the living room. Amanda stood in my doorway, mascara running down her face, looking more like the daughter I remembered than she had in months. "Mom," she said, and broke into sobs. "I'm so sorry. I've been so awful. Can I come in?" I pulled her inside, wrapped my arms around her for the first time in what felt like years. She clung to me, crying into my shoulder, and I cried too. Patricia stood in the corner, arms crossed, face skeptical. "Trevor's been pressuring me," Amanda said when she could speak. "His parents have been in my ear constantly, telling me what to do, how to act. I lost myself. I don't even know how it happened. But I woke up this morning and realized I married him 3 days ago, and I haven't talked to my mom, and what have I done?" We spent the afternoon talking. Really talking, the way we hadn't in months. Amanda apologized over and over. She said she wanted to separate the beach house issue from our relationship, put it aside and deal with it later. "I just want my mom back," she said. "I miss you. I miss us." I wanted so desperately to believe her. I fed her, made her favorite tea, listened as she talked about feeling overwhelmed by Trevor's lifestyle and expectations. She stayed for dinner, and we laughed together for the first time in 6 months. When she left, she hugged me tight and said, "I love you, Mom. I'm sorry for everything." After she drove away, Patricia said, "I don't trust this." "She's my daughter," I said. "People make mistakes. She's trying to fix things. Or Trevor sent her here for something. Did she ask you for anything?" "No, we just talked." But Patricia's skepticism stayed in my mind as I tried to sleep that night. At 11, my phone buzzed with an email notification from the county court system. Emergency protective order filed. Case number 476923. Respondent, Jocelyn Marie Carson. Petitioner, Amanda Carson Blackwell. My daughter had filed for a restraining order against me. I opened the document with shaking hands. Amanda claimed I'd been stalking and harassing her and Trevor, that I'd made threatening statements about Trevor, that I'd shown up uninvited at their honeymoon location and created a hostile and frightening confrontation, that she feared for her safety and needed legal protection from her unstable and obsessive mother. The court date was in 5 days. If the judge granted the order, I'd be legally prohibited from contacting Amanda or Trevor, from going within 500 feet of them or the beach house for a full year. Violation could result in arrest. The afternoon visit had been a setup. I saw that now with horrible clarity. Amanda had come to my house, recorded our conversation on her phone hidden in her purse. She was probably planning to edit the audio, take things out of context, make me sound threatening or unstable. I called Patricia, sobbing. She came back over immediately, read the court filing, and her face went tight with rage. That manipulative little. She stopped herself. "I'm calling Martin first thing tomorrow. We're fighting this." The next morning, I discovered Trevor had posted on his social media, dealing with difficult family legal issues. Sometimes you have to protect your wife from toxic people, even if it's her own mother. When someone's behavior becomes threatening and obsessive, you have no choice but to take legal action. Prayers needed during this hard time. The comments were full of support for him. People I'd never met calling me terrible, saying Amanda was brave for standing up to me. My name wasn't mentioned, but anyone who knew us would know exactly who he meant. My reputation, built over 63 years of living honestly and treating people with respect, was being destroyed online by a con artist and his accomplice who happened to be my daughter. The restraining order hearing was the worst day of my life. Worse than my divorce. Worse than my mother's death. Worse than any day I'd lived through, because this time the person hurting me was my own child. Amanda took the stand in a pale blue dress that made her look young and vulnerable. She cried as she testified, her voice shaking, talking about years of emotional abuse and control. She claimed I'd criticized every boyfriend she'd ever had, trying to keep her dependent on me. She said I'd held financial support over her head as manipulation. She said that when she'd finally found happiness with Trevor, I'd become obsessed with destroying her marriage. She described my arrival at the beach house as terrifying, said I'd screamed at her and Trevor, made threats about taking legal action against them, caused her to fear for her physical safety. It was all lies, twisted versions of the truth, or pure fiction. But she cried so convincingly, looked so scared, that I could see the judge's expression softening with sympathy. Martin Caldwell tried his best. He pointed out that Amanda had co-ownership of the property, that I had a right to check on my own house. He mentioned the extensive property damage that Amanda and Trevor had caused. He tried to paint the picture of what was really happening. A con man and his wife attempting to steal from a vulnerable older woman. But we didn't have the doctored audio yet. Amanda and Trevor hadn't submitted it as evidence, just referenced that they had recordings of me being threatening. Without being able to hear what they'd actually recorded or edited, we couldn't prove it was manipulated. Trevor's father, representing Amanda, was smooth and professional. He painted me as a controlling, bitter woman unable to accept her daughter's independence. He submitted character witnesses, friends of Trevor and Amanda who testified about my aggressive behavior at the beach house, my obsessive phone calls, my harassment. The judge, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, looked troubled as she reviewed everything. "Mrs. Carson," she said, "do you have anything you'd like to say?" I stood up. my legs shaking. Your Honor, I love my daughter. Everything I've done has been out of love and concern. I'm not a threat to her. I'm trying to protect her from someone who I believe means her harm. But I would never, ever hurt Amanda. She's my whole world. The judge nodded slowly. Then she said, I'm going to grant a temporary restraining order, pending a full hearing in 30 days. Mrs. Carson, you are ordered to stay at least 500 feet away from your daughter Amanda Carson Blackwell, her husband Trevor Blackwell, and the property located at 47 Ocean Drive, Cape May, New Jersey. No contact by phone, email, text, social media, or through third parties. This order is effective immediately. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, I whispered. Walking out of that courtroom, I felt like I'd been erased. My daughter had legally removed me from her life, and a judge had approved it. Martin walked me to my car. We'll appeal this at the full hearing. We'll gather more evidence, get testimony from your sister about what she overheard. This isn't over, but it would cost money. He told me the restraining order defense would run about $15,000. With the earlier consultations, I'd already spent $18,000 on legal fees. My retirement savings were hemorrhaging. I was 63 years old, had planned to retire in 2 years, and instead I was spending my future on lawyers. At home, I felt like I was moving through fog. Patricia tried to help, but there was nothing she could do. Nothing anyone could do. I'd lost. Trevor had won. He'd taken my daughter, turned her against me, and was about to take my beach house. Maybe eventually my home too, just like Carol had overheard. Word spread through my small town. I don't know how, but these things always do. I started noticing looks at church, whispers at the grocery store. Some people were sympathetic, but others had clearly heard Trevor and Amanda's version. Controlling mother, poor daughter finally breaking free. I stopped going to church. Stopped going anywhere I didn't absolutely have to go. I felt like my entire life was collapsing. Patricia found me one afternoon in my darkened living room, just sitting, staring at nothing. We need to organize your documents for the next hearing, she said gently. Martin needs everything we can give him. I nodded and forced myself to move. We spent 3 days going through papers, printing out emails, organizing the security camera footage. Patricia watched hours of the beach house videos, taking notes on everything. On the 4th day, she called me into my office, her face strange. Jocelyn, you need to see this. She'd been watching footage from the party the first night Trevor and Amanda were at the beach house. There was a moment, around midnight, when Trevor was very drunk, standing on the deck with a group of friends. Patricia had been lip-reading, trying to catch anything useful. Watch, she said, and played a segment. Trevor was gesturing wildly, clearly intoxicated, talking to 3 men about his own age. The security camera didn't record audio, but Patricia had watched it a dozen times, rewinding and freezing frames. I can't hear it, I said. I can read his lips for some of it. And look at this part. She pointed to a moment where Trevor pulled one friend close, spoke directly into his ear, but his face was still partially visible. He says something like, oldest trick in the book, and then mother-in-law, and then he laughs. Here, watch his expression. She played it again. Trevor's face as he spoke was smug, triumphant. Patricia froze it on a frame where Trevor was looking straight at the camera, seemingly unaware of it, with an expression of pure calculated cruelty. Keep watching, Patricia said. In the next clip, Trevor was talking to a different friend, gesturing toward the house. I've watched this 40 times, Patricia said. He says, Amanda's playing her part perfectly, and then something about might not even stay married, and then, this is just business. My blood went cold. He's planning to divorce her after they get the money. That's what it looks like to me. But Jocelyn. Patricia paused the video. Before we can figure out how to use this, we have a more immediate problem. She pulled up an email on her phone and handed it to me. It was from a real estate agency sent to my email address. Subject, listing agreement for 47 Ocean Drive. I opened it with a feeling of dread. The email confirmed that the property at 47 Ocean Drive, Cape May, New Jersey, had been listed for sale at $675,000. As co-owner, Amanda Carson Blackwell had the legal right to initiate the sale. The email noted that if I, as the other co-owner, refused to cooperate with the sale, They would petition the court to force a partition sale. Attached was a document showing an accepted offer, $675,000, all cash, closing in 3 weeks. The buyer was a limited liability corporation, Shoreline Properties, LLC. I searched the LLC online. It took some digging, but I found the registration documents. Shoreline Properties, LLC was owned by Richard and Margaret Blackwell, Trevor's parents. They were buying my beach house through a shell company, probably planning to lowball the value, cut me out of my fair share, and keep the property for themselves or flip it for profit. I looked at Patricia, saw my own despair reflected in her eyes. They'd won. They'd taken everything. My daughter, my house, my savings paying lawyers, my reputation, my peace of mind, my health. I had nothing left to fight with. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by papers, looking at everything I'd gathered. Security footage showing Trevor admitting it was a con. Carol's testimony about the overheard conversation about stealing my main house too. The forged email from my account. Bank records of the attempted hack. The shell company purchase agreement. Trevor's lawsuit history. Everything. At 3 a.m, something shifted in my mind. I'd been playing defense this entire time, reacting to their moves, trying to protect what was mine. But I'd forgotten something important. I wasn't helpless. I'd spent 33 years running a hospital department, managing budgets, dealing with conflicts, solving problems. I'd survived a difficult divorce, raised a child alone, built a comfortable life from nothing. I wasn't the weak, controllable old woman Trevor thought I was. It was time to go on offense. At dawn, I called Martin Caldwell's emergency number. When he answered, groggy and confused, I said, "I need you to listen to everything I'm about to tell you. And then I need you to tell me if what I'm thinking is legally sound." I laid it all out. Not a family dispute. Not a property disagreement. A crime. Multiple crimes. Wire fraud for using my email to send fake documents. Identity theft for attempting to access my bank account. Elder financial abuse for targeting me, specifically because of my age and vulnerability. Conspiracy for Trevor and his parents working together on the shell company scheme. Possibly even extortion for threatening to keep me from my daughter unless I gave in to their demands. Martin was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "I'm not a criminal attorney, but yes, this could potentially be prosecuted. The question is whether the district attorney would take the case. Can you call them? Today?" "It's Saturday, Jocelyn. Then Monday. First thing. Please, Martin, help me fight back." Monday morning, Martin contacted the district attorney's office. He presented the evidence. Trevor's history of defrauding investors. The suspicious shell company purchase. The attempted bank hack from an IP address in Cape May. The forged email. Carol's sworn statement about the overheard conversation. The security footage showing property destruction and Trevor's admissions. The assistant district attorney assigned to review the case was a woman named Rachel Torres. She called me directly on Tuesday. "Mrs. Carson, I've reviewed the materials your attorney sent. I'm very interested in this case. Fraud against elderly victims is a priority for our office. Can you come in for an interview?" I spent 3 hours in her office on Wednesday, telling her everything. She recorded it all, took notes, asked detailed questions. At the end, she said, "I'm opening an investigation. I can't promise prosecution yet, but what you've described suggests a pattern of predatory behavior. If we can prove intent to defraud, we're looking at serious charges." The investigation moved faster than I'd expected. Rachel Torres was thorough and relentless. She subpoenaed Trevor's financial records, Amanda's phone records, the Blackwell's business documents. She interviewed the people who'd attended the beach house party. Some of them, scared of legal trouble themselves, were surprisingly willing to testify about what Trevor had said. She discovered that Trevor's cryptocurrency business was actually a Ponzi scheme. He'd been using new investor money to pay fake returns to earlier investors, all while skimming funds for his luxury lifestyle. The lawsuit I'd found was just one of many victims. Trevor was on the verge of the whole scheme collapsing when he'd met Amanda. Amanda with her mother, who owned a beach house worth $650,000 and a home worth $400,000. Over $1 million in property to steal. 1 week before the beach house sale was supposed to close, The district attorney's office executed search warrants. Police raided Trevor and Amanda's apartment at 6 in the morning. They raided his parents' home office. They seized computers, phones, hard drives, files, everything. Trevor was arrested that afternoon and charged with wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit fraud, and elder financial abuse. His father was charged as an accessory for his role in the shell company scheme. His mother was listed as a person of interest. Bail was set at $250,000. Amanda wasn't arrested that day, but she was brought in for questioning. I wasn't there, but Rachel Torres told me later what happened. Amanda had walked in confident, probably coached by Trevor's instructions. But when Rachel laid out the evidence, showed her the security footage of Trevor's drunken admissions, told her the charges she herself might face, that confidence had crumbled. "She's looking at 15 years if we prosecute her fully," Rachel said. "Wire fraud, conspiracy, identity theft, all of it. I told her we might consider a deal if she cooperated fully." Amanda broke. She gave a full statement, admitting everything. Trevor had targeted her specifically because of my assets. The whirlwind romance had been calculated. He'd isolated her from me, convinced her I was the problem, coached her on how to manipulate me. His parents had been involved from the start, planning the shell company purchase. The wedding without me had been part of the plan, to hurt me enough that I'd be vulnerable to their demands. Amanda claimed she hadn't fully understood what they were doing at first, that Trevor had gradually pulled her in deeper and deeper. She said she'd felt trapped by the time she realized it was fraud. She agreed to testify against Trevor in exchange for reduced charges. I don't know if I believed her claims of innocence. I still don't. But it didn't matter anymore. The legal case moved forward without needing my forgiveness or understanding. With criminal charges filed, Martin immediately got the beach house sale stopped. He filed to have Amanda's name removed from the property deed, arguing that the co-ownership had been for estate planning purposes only, and that she'd forfeited any claim through her criminal actions. The judge, faced with evidence of fraud, agreed. Martin also helped me file a civil lawsuit against Trevor, Amanda, and Trevor's parents for damages. Legal fees, $23,000. Medical expenses from my emergency room visit, $3,200. Property repairs, $14,000. Emotional distress, pain and suffering, lost work time. The total came to $187,000. Trevor's parents, facing criminal charges and terrified of a trial, settled within 2 weeks. They paid me $225,000, agreed to cover all repairs to the beach house at their expense, and signed a permanent injunction, preventing Trevor or anyone in their family from ever contacting me again. The beach house was mine again, fully and completely. Amanda pleaded guilty to conspiracy and accessory charges. In exchange for her testimony against Trevor, she received 3 years probation, 500 hours of community service, and mandatory counseling. She was also ordered to pay me restitution, $15,000 over 5 years. The nursing board suspended her license for 2 years pending psychiatric evaluation. Trevor went to trial 8 months later. His cryptocurrency Ponzi scheme had unraveled completely by then. 17 other victims had come forward, people he'd defrauded of over $2 million. The charges piled up: wire fraud, securities fraud, mail fraud, money laundering, identity theft, elder abuse. He was convicted on 23 counts and sentenced to 4 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. His father was convicted as an accessory and received 18 months. His mother avoided criminal charges by cooperating with investigators, but their marriage didn't survive it. She filed for divorce while her husband was in prison. And me? 6 months after Trevor's conviction, I stood on the deck of my beach house, the same deck where Trevor had drunkenly boasted about conning me. The house had been fully repaired, better than it was before. New white sofa, professionally cleaned antique rug. The china cabinet's glass replaced. Even the deck railing was reinforced and restained. Patricia stood beside me, holding a glass of wine, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "How do you feel?" she asked. I thought about it. Tired, I admitted. Sad, but also free. I spent so many years trying to be the perfect mother, trying to give Amanda everything, that I forgot to teach her the most important lessons: integrity, honesty, That respect is earned, not demanded. That people aren't tools to be used for profit. You did teach her those things, Patricia said gently. She chose not to listen. Maybe. I took a sip of my own wine, felt the breeze off the ocean. I learned something too, though. I learned that sometimes the family you choose, your real friends, matter more than the family you're born into. You were there for me through everything. You never wavered. Patricia squeezed my hand. The settlement money had more than replenished my retirement account. I'd even started making plans to actually retire next year, a year later than originally planned, but still secure. The beach house was safe. My main home was safe. I'd survived people who'd tried to take everything from me. A letter had arrived last week from Amanda, forwarded through the probation office as required by the restraining order that was still in effect for another 6 months. It was handwritten, 3 pages long. She wrote that she was sorry. That therapy had helped her see how she'd let Trevor manipulate her, how she'd betrayed her own mother for the promise of easy money that never materialized. She didn't ask for forgiveness, just said she understood if I never wanted to see her again. She said she was working at a grocery store, trying to pay her restitution, going to counseling twice a week. She said she thought about me every day. I'd read the letter once, folded it carefully, and put it in a drawer. I didn't know if I'd ever respond. Maybe someday, years from now, when Amanda had truly rebuilt her life and proven she'd changed, we could have some kind of relationship again. But not now. Now, I needed to protect myself, to heal, to put my own well-being first for the first time in decades. You know what the strangest part is? I said to Patricia as the sun sank lower. I'm happier now than I've been in years, even with everything that happened. Even with losing Amanda, or at least losing the version of Amanda I thought I knew, I feel lighter. You're not carrying her anymore, Patricia said. You spent 28 years carrying her, supporting her, worrying about her. You don't have to do that anymore. You can just live your own life. I smiled, watching the last rays of sunlight sparkle on the waves. Yes, I think that's exactly it. A young couple walked by on the beach below, holding hands, laughing. I watched them and thought about all the people who'd told me I was too controlling, too involved in my daughter's life. Maybe they'd been right in a way. Not about the controlling part. I'd never tried to control Amanda, but about the involvement. I'd made her my whole world, and when she'd wanted to leave that world, I hadn't known how to let her go gracefully. I'd held on too tight, and she'd responded by cutting me off completely. But I'd also learned that loving someone doesn't mean letting them walk all over you. It doesn't mean sacrificing your own security, your own peace, your own future. Real love requires boundaries. It requires respect. And when someone shows you through their actions that they don't respect you, you have to believe them and protect yourself accordingly. These were lessons I wish I'd learned when Amanda was younger. But better late than never. As darkness fell and stars began appearing, Patricia and I moved inside. The house felt like mine again, not just in the legal sense, but emotionally. I'd reclaimed it from people who'd tried to take it from me. I thought about Trevor in prison, facing 3 more years of his sentence. I thought about his parents, divorced and disgraced. I thought about Amanda stocking shelves at a grocery store, trying to figure out who she was without Trevor's influence. And I thought about myself, 63 years old, standing in my beach house, financially secure, legally protected, and finally at peace. I'd been knocked down. I'd been betrayed by the person I loved most in the world. I'd been conned, threatened, financially attacked, and legally harassed, but I'd fought back. I'd survived. And I'd won. Not just won in court or won back my property, though those things mattered. I'd won something more important. I'd won back my sense of self-worth, my confidence, my understanding that I deserved to be treated with respect and dignity. Some people spend their whole lives letting others take advantage of them, especially family members. I'd almost become one of those people, but I'd stopped it, drawn the line, said no more. That night, I slept better than I had in months, in the master bedroom of my beach house, with the sound of waves outside my window. In the morning, I made coffee and sat on the deck with my laptop, starting to plan my retirement for real this time. Travel I wanted to do, books I wanted to read. Maybe I'd even try online dating, something I'd always been too nervous to attempt. I was 63, not dead. There was still life ahead of me. My phone rang, an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mrs. Carson?" a woman's voice said. "My name is Janet Rodriguez. I'm calling from the Elder Abuse Prevention Network. The district attorney's office gave me your name. We're doing a series of educational videos about financial exploitation of seniors, and we were wondering if you'd be willing to share your story. We'd protect your identity, of course, but your case is exactly the kind of thing we're trying to warn people about." I hesitated, then said, Yes, I'd like to do that. If my story could help even one person recognize a con artist before it was too late, then something good would come from all this pain. After I hung up, I realized I was smiling. Not a bitter smile or a sad smile, but a genuine smile of satisfaction. I turned my worst experience into a teaching moment for others. That's when I knew I'd really healed. The months passed. Summer came, and I rented the beach house out for a few weeks to a nice family from Ohio. I stayed in my main house in Pennsylvania, working on my garden, having dinner with Patricia and other friends, slowly rebuilding my life. Amanda's restitution payments arrived like clockwork, $93.75 every month. I put them in a separate account, not sure what I'd do with them eventually. Maybe donate it to a charity for fraud victims. Maybe save it for if and when Amanda proved she'd truly changed. I went back to church, held my head high when people stared. Most people were kind. The ones who weren't didn't matter. I retired on my 64th birthday, a year after everything had fallen apart and come back together. I threw myself a party, invited everyone who'd supported me, and stood in my living room, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about me. Patricia gave a toast to Jocelyn, who taught us all that you're never too old to fight back, to stand up for yourself, and to choose your own happiness. Everyone raised their glasses, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Pure, uncomplicated joy. That night, I wrote in my journal, something I'd started doing in therapy. I survived a con artist and his accomplice who happened to be my own child. I fought back when I could have given up. I learned that sometimes the family you choose matters more than the family you're born into. I learned to put my own well-being first. And I learned that it's never too late to reclaim your life, your peace, and your happiness. I closed the journal and looked around my home, my safe, secure, protected home. Everything I'd built over 64 years of living was still here. It had been threatened, attacked, nearly stolen. But I'd defended it. I'd won. And that made all the difference. Now, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had someone close to you, someone you trusted completely, betray that trust for their own gain? How did you handle it? Did you fight back or walk away? And if you could give advice to someone going through something similar, what would you tell them? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who's facing their own difficult situation. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Share it with anyone you think might benefit from hearing about standing up for yourself, no matter your age or circumstances. Your support helps these stories reach the people who need them most. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that you're stronger than you think, that it's never too late to protect yourself, and that respect and integrity matter more than any amount of money. Take care of yourselves, and remember, you deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, always.